Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as we learn more about German cockroaches from Mark, aka Shep Shepperdagen. My name is Beth Thomas, and I'm the Training and Development Specialist for the Pesticide Education Department here for the Montana Department of Agriculture. Before we begin the actual webinar, I have a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to bring to your attention. But first of all, just to share a little bit about some of our upcoming trainings, we do have our initial core training. If you know people, operators or people that want to become an applicator, a licensed applicator in the state of Montana, we'll be offering 4 initial core trainings across the state of Montana. You can check our website out by either scanning the QR code on the screen or going to the link that's also present there. If some of you are still looking for credits at this point in the year, there are lots of opportunities still available. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker today, better known simply as Shep. He is an urban entomologist who serves as the Vice President of Technical Services for Rose Pest Solutions of Troy, Michigan. He has become well known both locally and nationally within the pest management industry. Shep graduated in 1982 from Michigan State University with a bachelor's degree in entomology. Since April of 1983, Shep has been working in urban pest management, and he has held a variety of positions, including service, sales, management, and technical support. Among his many current duties are the oversight and support of Rose Canine Division. Shep has served on working groups and committees at all levels to develop training programs and technical position papers. From 1987 until its dissolution in 2020, Shep was a member of Copeson Technical Committee, where he served 2 years as the chairman and now serves on the board of the Urban Pest Management Technical Committee, a group that consists of technical staff from companies across North America. He's also a columnist for Pest Management Professional magazine and contributes expert opinion for articles in many trade journals and newspapers across the country. Shep is a regular invited speaker to many conferences and training courses around the nation. He is a board-certified entomologist and a PCT Crown Leadership Award recipient. So Shep, without further ado.
Our topic today is German cockroaches. And this is kind of a wide-angle view since it's just an introduction. Hang on a second. You see that? Good. We're here we go. The German cockroach is it's an iconic urban pest. It was the only urban pest for so long, or at least it seemed that way. But there's been times it's had its ups and its downs, and that's what we're going to talk about. It is a truly an urban pest. There's a lot of pests out there, and they have their pest environment and their natural environment. Like carpenter ants, the natural environment of the carpenter ant is a forested land. It's an arboreal insect. What's the natural environment of the German cockroach? It's the kitchen. That's where they're from. They're not from the forest or the desert. They're from the kitchen. And that being the case, as long as there's kitchens, there will be German cockroaches. And so we don't have to worry about cockroaches ever showing up on the protected species list. They are not. They are not a protected species, and they're not going to be. And as long as we aren't going to eliminate their habitat, we aren't going to eliminate them. So they'll be here. Oh, not a protected species. Guess what else? They're not a protected class. Let me get this going. If I have lots of pictures, but I only show you one, what good is that? There we go. If they're a protected species, they're not a protected class, and you know what that means. We can make fun of them. Did you hear about the cockroach that broke its leg breaking leaves? Fell out of the tree. Did you hear about the cockroach that locked his kids in the car? Wait. I'll mess that one up. For those of you, did you hear about the cockroach that locked his keys in the car, took him an hour and a half to get his wife and kids out? It'd be funnier if you didn't mess up the joke. So with that, okay, let's move on. That's not what we're here for. We're here for German cockroaches. And you would think that they're pretty easy to pick out, because what looks like a German cockroach? Well, actually, several things do. This is the Asian cockroach, and it may be that you've never seen one. I've seen them on occasion, but they're right now pretty well limited to Florida, but occasionally they show up in other places. As you look at that, you go, that sure looks like a German cockroach to me. And it does, because they look just like German cockroaches, but they're not. Their habits are very different. They fly readily, and they'll fly to lights readily, and they'll fill up your yard. They live outside. They can come inside, but they can't make a living there, so they would die if they were stuck in the house, unlike German cockroaches. And that's not the only. There are field roaches. If you've ever run into a field cockroach, Blatella vega, and this thing, it's got a brown bar between the eyes, and on one of these, you can perhaps see this right here. It's got like a brown pigmentation between the eyes, which German cockroaches don't have. But man, who looks for that when you see a cockroach? I don't. However, like the Asian cockroach, field cockroaches are from the outside, so you generally don't see them inside either. But I bring this up because if someone hands you a dead cockroach and says, "What is this?" the proper answer is, "Well, it sure looks like a German cockroach. Where did it come from?" And if they say, "Well, it flew to the TV screen at night," it's not. Okay, I get it. None of these live in Montana, but where they do live, they can be found in pretty big numbers. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that you run across this. So I just wanted you to know that, yeah, there's some pretty German cockroachy looking things that aren't German cockroaches. All right, let's talk about biology. As an overview or an introduction to, we're just going to talk a little bit about everything. Biology is all about life cycles and how they grow and reproduce. And life cycles is about. There are no hard figures. There is no set number. The female German cockroach has 5 egg cases through her life. No, maybe 5, usually 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, maybe 3. It all varies. All depends on how long she lives. That depends on how good the food is and how warm it is. So everything changes. Takes 50, 60 days to go from egg to adult. But that can vary too. Temperature has a lot to do with how long it takes for a cockroach to mature. In a cold environment, it takes a lot longer. In a cold environment with bad food, it takes even longer than that. May take months, may take many months for it to mature. In a warm environment with lots of great food, it may only go 6 weeks. So these things vary. What's important to remember is that they multiply quickly. And so it doesn't take too many to be able to get things out of hand in relatively short order. And while that first generation through may take 6 weeks, at that point, you'll have a lot. The female does produce about 5 egg cases in her lifetime, and each of those egg cases has about 35 young. Now, it's about 35 young because you never know. Some are bigger than others, and sometimes the egg case looks like a little clutch purse. You can see them here in the graphic. This is an egg case being carried around by a female, and that's got 35 or thereabouts young inside it. And what they're going to do when it's time to come out is they're all together going to, what are they going to do? They're all going to push as hard as they can, and they're going to open that egg case like a clutch purse. And then it's every cockroach for themselves. Then you got to get out, and they'll do that. They all pop out until there's not enough to hold it open anymore, and then it kind of snaps shut. And so if you look at a spent egg case, you may find a dead embryonic cockroach that never did make it out, or you may find one with its foot caught in the trap, like the old diver in the clam shell, bear trap kind of thing. Oh yeah. So it's not a certain thing. generally good to be the cockroach nymph in the middle of the egg case, no doubt about that. But 35, oh yeah, 50 to 60 days. Of those 35, about half of them are female. So now you got what, 17? And if each of those are producing an egg capsule, 17 times 35 is what? 350 plus. It's got to be on the area of 500, 550, somewhere in there. Don't look it up. Anyway, you can see how this goes really fast. And after another 50 to 60 days, those are going to be mature. And it just goes on and on from there. It's slow as it starts, but then it spikes and then it explodes. And it'll get just as big as it can get based on the environment. And so let's talk about their habits a little bit. They can eat just about anything. They are omnivorous, and they will eat anything of plant or animal or fungal origin. I've read that some cockroaches, don't know if Germans can do this, some cockroaches will chew plastic, which, as you may know, is a big carbon-based polymer, and be able to digest it for food value. I don't know if Germans can do that or not, but I do know that they can eat just about anything. So, and as much as getting a full meal from a dried spot of Coca-Cola underneath a bar. In some cases, soap. In some cases, just residues, anything they can scrape up, they'll get by. All they got to do is get enough calories in. Just because they can eat anything doesn't mean they want anything. They have some decided preferences, and this may become important when it comes to controlling cockroaches. So they come out every night looking for food, with a couple of exceptions. When the nymphs go to molt, which is how they grow from stage to stage, split their skins and come out and get a little bigger. When they do that, there's usually a couple of days where they'll sit pretty quietly waiting for this to happen, and they won't be feeding. So what you put out tonight, there may still be some stragglers coming in tomorrow night or the night after. Females, when they're developing egg cases, may seclude themselves for a number of days, maybe a week or two, as they develop egg cases and drop those. Incidentally, they do that so they're gone, and then they drop the egg case, which of course hatches within 2 days of being dropped, about 2 days of being dropped. And the female is on her way out to get some food because she's been sitting for a while. If you've ever done this and had an account go, hey, I think you're feeding them, they're getting bigger. They're seeing females that have been sequestered as they develop egg cases. Very common. There could be other reasons, but that one is a very common reason for why they would see great big cockroaches many days into the program. So they can eat just about anything. Water is important. In fact, they're very tightly tied to water. So tightly, in fact, it's a weakness. Now, if there's no water for them to find, development slows way down, movement goes way down, and they won't survive without it. They can find water in a lot of places. They can get it from sweating cold water pipes. They can get it from drips and from damp surfaces and places that were washed but not dried. They can make use of a lot of different water sources. If there's sufficient water in their food, they can make use of that. But they need a lot of water, and that's an important way to exert control on them. You can limit their water. You can really tip things in your favor. Habits. Harborage. Everybody's got to live somewhere. Now, there's a lot of pests that will figure it out. Some have no place that they call home. German cockroaches, on the other hand, are very tightly tied to harborage. They live in cracks and crevices. They live in tight spots, in voids, someplace that's dark, preferably quiet, and preferably warm. And that's kind of what they're looking for. We call this thigmotaxis. They want to be in a tight spot. They want to have their back up against a wall and their belly up against a wall. That's a pretty safe place to be. So nobody can come at you, but you don't know about it. So it's a defensive move. They're always looking for cracks. If you were to offer a German cockroach population a series of cracks in varying sizes, they would sort themselves into it, with the smallest cockroaches taking the smallest cracks. And as it goes up, they would absolutely sort themselves out. They're just they're crazy about it. They love cracks. That's all they want, is just a nice crack to sit in. They're the original crack addicts. Oh yeah, addicted to crack. So that's what you get with cockroaches, tightly tied to water. They can eat just about anything. They got to have cracks and crevices to sit in. If you find a place where there's no harborage left, you'll see cockroaches everywhere, and they wander around and they don't know what to do. It's when they find a place that they can get out of view, that's where they sit quietly. So, guy walks into a pet shop and says, "You sell cockroaches?" And of course, pet shop owner wasn't quite sure what this was about. He said, "Sure. How many do you need?" Guy said, "Oh, I don't know, 10, 15,000. Of course, 10 or 15,000. What do you need that for? Well, I'm moving out, and the landlord said I got to leave the apartment like I found it. All right. That's enough of that. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the German cockroach as an urban pest. It has been a pest for hundreds of years, and it's been in our homes and our kitchens. And there's always been ways to deal with them. Early on, it was baits and organic dusts. In fact, the graphic, the gator roach hive, you may still see those around. That's got lead arsenate in it. That's some pretty potent stuff. That'll kill more than cockroaches. But hey, anything that they could get to work, they would use. And you just kind of did your best. There were a number of baits that were out there, and some were more potent than others. But things really changed when the sprayables came along. Oh, inorganic dusts. There was sodium fluoride and boric acid, and those have been used, and they still, I don't know if you can still get sodium fluoride. That may be a little hot. I haven't seen it on the market in a while, but boric acid is certainly still around. These are things that have always worked very well on cockroaches and never had too much trouble with. But in the 40s, when DDT came home from the war, then began the golden age of sprayables and contact insecticides, and we just ran into all kinds of fun stuff. DDT was amazing in its early days, as was chlordane and a few other products that the farther we go along, the less it means to the audiences I speak to. Although I bet there's a few of you out there who may know what I'm talking about. Either way, we use contact insecticides. It was tantamount to magic. You would just take a compressed air sprayer and you would spray a thin band of chlordane all the way around the room, and within 24 hours, all the cockroaches live there were dead. And that was that. Done. And so why would anybody do anything else? Well, worked wonderfully for, year, 2 years, years. But it didn't take long before resistance started to build up. And when you have a product that is a silver bullet that works that well and now it stops working, that's an issue. Well, after that, the development of the organophosphates and carbamates came into play. Dursban was probably the best known of all the organophosphates. These materials were easy to mix, easy to apply, very effective, at least at the start. But after not too long, cockroaches built resistance to them, and they stopped responding. And so then it became a time of trying to figure out what are we going to do throughout the 70s and 80s, which was the early years of integrated pest management. With the idea behind integrated pest management is, of course, to integrate different methods into one program so everything's working together. Nothing works in and of itself, but all together you can get enough effect that that's worth doing. So that's what we did, and the pyrethroids came in after that. And at first, pyrethroids were all non-residual, like pyrethrin was not really a pyrethroid, but it was the pattern for which the pyrethroids were built. You spray it into the air in an aerosol, it does its job, and within a number of minutes, it deactivates. And then they learned to make residual pyrethroids, which was some of you have always had these, and so you missed the real magic of seeing this come on the market. It was a don't force it, get a bigger hammer. Deltamethrin and cypermethrin, these were bigger hammers, and they were incredible in their ability to kill cockroaches. They did have some drawbacks. They were pretty repellent, or at least the cockroaches are able to avoid them. The term repellent is starting to come under some scrutiny, so I'm not sure what that means anymore. All I know is it used to be when you put the stuff down, the cockroaches that didn't die weren't going to touch it, and they stayed away. And we did that throughout the 70s and into the 80s. In the late 80s, something happened. It was the great bait revolution. And while there had been baits before, there was a return to baits, and there were a number of things that came up. There's actually quite a bit of history behind baiting in the second wave of baits, but we haven't time for that. They came out with baits that were so attractive to the cockroaches that they worked wonderfully. Because remember, we said come out every night to feed. Well, if you're going to use contact insecticides, and some people still do, you've got to get those insecticides where they're going to spend time with the cockroaches. You've got to get exposure. So you got to get to where the cockroaches are. When you're baiting, the cockroaches need to get to your bait. And truth be known, the cockroaches are way better at finding food than you are at finding the cockroaches. And that was the way of it. It was pursuit, with you chasing them, and that was not good for you. On the other hand, when there's good baits out there and you put those out, it's the cockroaches pursuing the baits, and that'll work just fine. So we went through a period of time when it seemed like German cockroaches weren't a big deal. They just kind of disappeared from lots of places or became secondary pests, and they weren't talked about much. And the ubiquitous German cockroach control symposium or conference just went away. And it was an odd time to be in this industry, but for those of you who remember it, that's what it was all about. But the wisest of us had always said, never bet against the cockroach. And that was certainly the case, because the cockroaches did have the next move, and their next move is what we call bait aversion. This is what bait aversion looks like. As you can see, there's only one little cockroach willing to even sample one of these baits. The other one, they're after as much as they can get as quick as they can get. Why would that be? Well, they've come to the point where all the cockroaches that really like the bait on the left, have died and not passed on that to their young. And so it's not a classic genetic resistance, which is a way of tolerating a, a toxicant, a poison, an active. It is a behavioral aversion. They've lost the behavior that puts them in contact with this bait. If they ate it, it would kill them, but they're not going to eat it. So now we have bait aversion. Well, that's unfortunate. So now what? Now what is, and you'll be seeing this if you haven't already, cockroaches are starting to show up in bigger numbers in more places. And it's more common to take on a new account and find it just dripping with cockroaches, or to go into apartments and find a number of them so heavily infested that you can smell it when you walk in the door, raining off the ceiling, that kind of thing. More and more, and it's gonna. So what do we do? Well, there are a number of things to do about that. One is maybe incorporate some contact insecticides into your baiting program. But the best thing to do is to validate your bait. What that means is you take the bait into the account where you've got to kill the cockroaches and offer it to them. If they come out like this, if they come out and eat that bait, they'll walk into the white hot spotlight of your flashlight to eat that stuff. You're going to win. This is going to go. If they won't, if you can't entice them to eat this right then and there in front of them, don't think you're going to get control. If you're the only one in that restaurant or that kitchen who's excited about this bait, don't even bother. Don't take it out. Find something that gets this kind of a reaction, and then you'll get somewhere, and then you'll be able to make it work. So an EMT ambulance screaming in, sirens blaring. EMT rushes up to the door. Door opens, a guy appears and reaches out to the EMT and hands him up, puts his hands out. This cockroach is about to have babies. Take it to the hospital and step on it. All right. We'll move on ahead. Let's talk about insect monitors and sticky traps, because this is really the most important aspect of any German cockroach control program. You need to know what's going on and where it's happening. And insect monitors or sticky traps. And some people I know, we've got a monitor snobs. No, they're not sticky. Don't call them sticky traps. That's so undignified. Yeah, well, they're sticky and they trap them, so they're sticky traps. I've been calling them sticky traps so long that that's what I'm going with. Insect monitors. Anything that will catch cockroaches, and they are pretty susceptible to any kind of glue traps. So you put it out and it catches them. I should point out that you cannot catch all the cockroaches in sticky traps. And while that might not seem right, you might think, well, what if you had a lot? Well, then you catch a lot of cockroaches. What if you had a lot more? Could you put out enough? No. You can try. You might even find an occasion where it seems to have happened. But the truth of the matter is, when you get an animal that reproduces this fast, you aren't going to trap it to extinction. That's not happening. But monitors can be used to tell you everything you need to know about a population. And so that's what we're going to talk about. They serve essentially 4 functions. First function is the size and scope. Now, I've noticed that if you've got a bar with the video that has me, the little talking head in the corner, you can actually drag that to the other side if you wanted to. Something gets covered up. The first function of insect monitors, sticky traps, is size and scope. They tell you where the population is. And so you got to put out a lot. The little triangles are representative of sticky traps that have been put into a representative restaurant that may or may not exist in reality. And you go through and you count the number of cockroaches you catch in a 24-hour period or a 48-hour period or a whatever period you choose. You should go back the same. If you're going to do this every 3 days, do it every 3 days. Twice a week, do it twice a week. Then you keep track of what you caught and write the numbers down. Now you've gone from inspection to monitoring. When you do that, the first thing you'll see is, as in this graphic, you'll see that, wow, these the traps with all the cockroaches with the most are centered around that kitchen. And there's a couple out in the dining room, but that's about it. So you can see where the population is centered, and that can help you, number one, focus your inspection and control efforts, and number two, help you to get a good feel on what do we got going for size and scope of the population. So once you know that, the next thing they do is they track the population. They show you trends up or down. Is it working? Is what you're doing working? If you go in and say we're gonna be baiting them, we went in and we baited this place, and we came back next week, and this is what we found. And as you can see with the legend, if you can, you can make this a certain amount of numbers. So greens are zeros, that kind of thing, and it doesn't matter. It's pretty arbitrary as long as it makes sense to you, and you can divide them into zero. Zero is important. Zero activity, light activity, medium activity, and heavy activity. That's what you want to be able to do. And if you can do that, you can tell, oh, look, we're doing a lot better, but we've got a ways to go. And so you can see that's how that's working. So 4 functions: size and scope of the population shows you where to start. Trends in population going up, or is it going down? Is this working? Not working. And third function, are we there yet? Yeah. Have we eliminated the cockroaches? And sticky traps are the way to do that. In fact, the last cockroach in the account will be found on a sticky trap. That is just the way it is. Long after the employees or staff say, hey, we haven't seen a cockroach in weeks, you guys have been doing great, you may still have some on sticky traps. So you're still watching. They'll let you know when you're done and when there's more to do. So showing elimination, which is also the same as documenting zero population, roach-free, documenting a roach-free environment. So you have a restaurant that is an account, and you've done this, and you're at zero, and you've been at zero for months, and you get a call, and they say, somebody found a cockroach. Why do we have cockroaches? And you come in and you check, and you're still at zeros. It's highly likely that cockroach isn't theirs. You can't prove that. You don't know for certain, but it's pretty likely. Generally, if there's cockroaches in the place, you'll have them in the sticky traps first. And that's the fourth function, is early detection of reinfestation. They got them once, and they could get them again. If they do, though, and you've got a good array out, you'll find them. You'll see them first. Say, oh yeah, took a few German cockroaches in the storeroom. Don't know what that's about, but we treated around there, or I put out some bait around there, or I did whatever, made some recommendations. The point is, you'll know first rather than getting the call back when the phone rings and, hey, we see cockroaches. Let the monitors do that for you. So using insect monitors, sticky traps, the important thing is that you use enough of them and you know where to put them. Primary harborages are probably primary harborages are the best place to put them. A primary harborage, you remember all those behaviors we had, the things they needed in food, water, and harborage? That's it. If they have some food, if they have high temperatures, warm temperatures, and if they have a great place to harbor, that's a primary harborage. They'll be there. We used to say wood, water, and warmth. Why wood? Because wood is absorptive, and when you get cockroach droppings, there are odors and chemicals that soak into an absorptive surface, and those cockroaches know those are there, and they use that to tell them this is a safe place to be. This is where we want to be. So wood was always better than stainless steel or tile. They can sit on that, but they'd rather not. Greasy surfaces, they hate that. Yeah, they can sit on it. You could probably eat it if they needed to, but they don't want to. They would much rather have cardboard, or I love cardboard, or wood, or paper, or something that will absorb those odors and make an obvious harborage for them. I advanced. Anyway, yeah, primary harborages. And so think about, I'm going back. Going back again. There we go. Secondary harborages. Secondary harborages are those harborages that have most of what they need. It's not perfect. So the harborages aren't great, but the food and water is fabulous. Or there's not a lot of food, but there's great harborage and lots of water. It could be there too. One of the things to do is to ask around, ask the staff, where have you seen them? And start there. That'll give you a good idea for where to start putting your insect monitors out. And where do you see them? And finally, what fulfills all those requirements that the cockroach has? Now, there are a number of different kinds of insect monitors, and you should probably choose the right kind. They all have advantages and disadvantages, and there's big ones and little ones and fancy ones and plain ones. And so which ones you choose and why does it matter? Well, generally use big monitors for big populations, like apartment buildings. And you're going to go in and we're going to do apartments and they got 52 units. Take in great big monitors. That way you won't fill them up. And sometimes you can get units with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cockroaches in there. They can fill up a monitor pretty quick. What you want to do is you want to be able to find the worst ones, the medium ones, and the light ones. If you have a big monitor that doesn't fill up quite so fast, then you're going to be able to do that. That helps you. If you just use the small monitors, they're inexpensive and easy to get and put out, but they all get full pretty quick if there's a lot of cockroaches. If you use the big ones, now you can tell the difference between big populations and bad populations and really bad and really bad populations and oh my gosh populations. You can tell those differences. That will help you as you decide where to put service first and how to apply it and where to come back and that kind of thing. So big populations, big monitors. On the other hand, small monitors are good for big areas. So we're doing there may or may not be a lot of cockroaches, but if you're doing a large commercial kitchen that spreads out over what, half an acre or more, you can put out lots of these small monitors, lots of them, dozens. You number them, put them on a map, kind of like I had, and date them, and you put them out, and you pick them up and put out fresh ones with the same number, a new date in the same spot. And you do that regularly, and you will be able to watch what happens to that population. But small monitors are going to work best if you're going to do great big areas. So, and they're inexpensive and easy to deploy. So, putting it all together, start with the monitors. If you're going to begin a program, the first thing to do is to go in, talk to people where you're seeing them, put out monitors, come back in a day or two and find out what the monitors tell you. That will show you where things are and what's really happening so that you don't work blind, so that you can see ahead of time, here's what I'm going to need to do. And then follow up. And follow up, what, every week or two? There's no science to how often you should follow up. Oh, follow up should be every 3 days for the first week. No, if you follow up every day, excuse me, that's too much, and you'll get tired of that fast. Every day, too much. Once a month, that's an invitation for failure. Do it more often than that. Yeah, probably in a bad situation, give it a week and come back. Then a couple of times a week until you get to where you need to go. One of the things, if you're keeping track of the numbers, this is what you're going to see. This is a typical population curve for any kind of German cockroach account where you have properly used your monitors. And as you can see, within a very short period of time, that population crashes. Also notice that that this tail just extends way out before it hits zero. Now, what drags that out? Well, that would be sanitation and harborage. The more sanitation, or the worse the sanitation is, the longer the tail is. And the more places to hide, the longer the tail is. So if you can get client cooperation, if you can get them to clean up food, if you can get them to stop pipe leaks, dry up water, if you can get them to seal up cracks and crevices and throw out old cardboard that they're not using, you'll watch this tail get shorter and shorter and this population curve go to zero as quickly as possible. Now, that happens because if the less food there is, the more they're going to wander around to find food. Remember, they're very good at finding it, and they'll go as far as they need to. If you can get them out wandering at night to find food, they're going to find your bait, and that's going to work. Or they're going to end up in a monitor, and that's going to work. Goes the same for harborage. You remove harborage, and they have to find fresh harborage. That'll get them out there. So if progress stalls and stops going down, that is one of the most important things that you can find. It means something's happened. There's a couple things it could be. Could be somebody's bringing them in regularly, and you'll know where because you've got an array, and you can see which traps catch all the cockroaches. It could be that you could stand to change your bait, use a different one, try it, or dust some voids, or bring in the micro injector and see if you can't find where is it that these cockroaches are living that we can't see it. If they've got a place to live, plenty of food and water, and you've not even come close to them with a bait, they won't be eating it. They'll be filling up that harborage and leaking out into the rest of your account. Remember, validated bait and concerted effort, and that will keep you where you want to go. If you don't kill them, they aren't going to just go away. You got to keep up the pressure till you win. So, in summary, German cockroaches are well suited to living with humans. And if you want to be successful, you got to know them and know them well. You have to know where they are. That's what monitors are for. And use plenty of validated bait to where they are, and sustained effort. Go till you hear glass. With that, I think we've got time for questions.
We have one question so far. Those of you that have questions, please type those into your Q&A area at the bottom of your screen, or in the menu bar that that was noticed to you, that was told to you before. One question that I have is, how small of a crack can they enter? Has that been identified?
Oh, yeah, it has. And you would ask, is that a real number? Well, it's about. I think it's 32nd of an inch, and number one can get in there. That is not very big at all.
Right. No, it's pretty small.
Cracks, but yeah, 32nd of an inch, and they get in there, and they just seem to just disappear into it. So it's really weird when you flush them out, and they seem to be coming out of nowhere.
Sure. And then another question would have been, I sort of noticed you had a lot of your sticky traps were the paper variety rather than the plastic tray variety. Do plastic trays work, or do you always want to use the paper type for a lower profile?
Plastic trays, profile. Plastic trays work. You'll catch more cockroaches if you don't have a lip, if you don't have something for them to walk over. Cockroaches, like a number of pests, are very line oriented, and they hit a wall or a line and they turn and they follow it. And if you've got a plastic tray and it sticks up too high and the cockroach is on the floor, it'll turn and follow it. Oh, you'll catch some, but not quite as many. That may not be all that important. What can be important is, and you saw what we were putting out in a small restaurant. So you're going through 24 of them twice a week or once a week. That's a lot of plastic trays to put out. Right. You can get those papers pretty inexpensive, and I recommend it.
Sure. I'm trying to think if there was one more that we had, and that was how close. You were talking about the baits being attractive to the cockroaches. That you were talking about that, trying to see the validating your bait as a method, and that is when you're putting the bait out, how close to the harborage area do you need in order for it to even lure them out? I mean, I guess if it's attractive to them, will it work even in daylight time? It seems to me that you would monitor it overnight and see if they're eating it the next day.
You'd be surprised. In most of the places that you'll go in and they say, oh, we got a problem with cockroaches, you should be able to find a cockroach close enough to the surface where you can offer that to them and see them come out. And you really do need to see a cockroach.
Okay.
Trying to think how many. It's not that often that you'll get an account where you can't find a cockroach to save your life, but they're here. In that case, put out some monitors, come back and see where you've caught them. Now you know about where they are. See if you can put out some bait. That is pretty rare. In most cases, a good flashlight, and hold the flashlight low, and you see antennae. They stick the antennae outside the crack or the crevice, and they can they're tasting what's going on in the air around them. So that's probably my best for that. And they will walk right out into your flashlight and eat it. It's you guys are supposed to get away from the light, but no.
Okay, a few more questions are starting to come in here. What types of dusts are recommended?
The desiccant dusts work really well. They have a tendency to the cockroaches don't end up there. They repellent. We used to say they're repellent. Now, are they repellent, or are they just irritating to the cockroaches? Either way, use that where you don't want cockroaches. So you use desiccant dusts out in public places. non-repellent dust like boric acid, that's what you use in back in the kitchens, where if there are cockroaches there, we can tolerate that a whole lot better than out on the floor. So you will also see pyrethroid based dusts and those kinds of things. I tend to stick with the inorganic dusts. They just seem to work better. You don't get the repellency issues with them so much. But
okay. The next question is I guess the person's asking, what are the best IGRs, or can you just talk a little bit about IGRs?
Yeah, IGRs. Actually, and if you have something more than an introduction to German cockroaches, some of the finer points.
Yeah,
IGRs are good and they work well. What they in addition to starting to cut out that developing population, IGRs cause gravid females to eat. Remember, I said they would sequester themselves and you wouldn't see them for a while. Well, with IGRs around, they will eat. The IGRs you want to use are there's hydroprene and methoprene. Hydroprene is the one that works on cockroaches. Methoprene is recommended and mostly labeled for insects with complete development, caterpillar, butterflies, moths and beetles and those kinds of things, whereas the hydroprene like Gentrol is for cockroaches and such. There are other juvenile hormone analogs, and those work pretty well. Those work pretty well on them also. I don't have that much experience with it. I got to say, the chitin synthesis inhibitors that are out, I've never spent that much time with them with cockroaches. To be honest, if you've got baits that work, that's your best bet.
Okay, and just to let the audience know what the IGR means for those that aren't familiar with that.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Let's use enough industry jargon that somebody isn't. It stands for insect growth regulator, which means all the chemistry that keeps the insect growing. An insect growth regulator is something that tells it when it's time to molt or it's not time to molt yet, that kind of thing. So IGR, insect growth regulator.
So by messing that up, it basically kills them because they can't go through that molt process.
That is correct. Too much juvenile hormone analog and you'll never make it to adult.
Good enough. What are some of the best baits that you have found?
Oh, at the risk of endorsing products that don't need my endorsement, it's not about good baits and bad baits. I know very few baits that don't work. And it has little to do with the active ingredient. Well, this one has this active ingredient, that one has that. Doesn't matter. As long as the active ingredient doesn't spook the cockroaches, what matters is the food matrix. Is it something they want? And you saw the picture of the cockroaches eating it right out of the tube. That's what you want. That's what makes a bait work. That's why bait aversion is a behavioral, because when they eat that bait, they eat a well over the toxic dose. So they're overdosing themselves with it.
So just to give the questioner a plan of action, if we don't have a specific brand name to focus on, would be, should they talk with their pesticide distributor, get a couple of samples, then kind of do their own trial in their own work and sort of find out what works in their area and their situation.
More than that, and your distributor is probably a really good source for what gets used around here and what doesn't get used sometimes.
Yeah. So that would be just to give that person a little advice there. Okay,
that's right. So always have more than one bait on your truck. If you only got one and it's not working, you're dead in the water, or you're using something else. But
now, is there a plan for how often they should swap out? Should they try one for a year and then go back? How often should they sort of rotate in terms of to do sort of resistance, or is it really more the behavioral resistance that's the problem, not chemical resistance.
It is, and that confounds everything.
Yeah.
Two things are true at the same time, and one is rotation isn't gonna short circuit beta version, killing them all short circuits beta version. The other thing is if you only use one kind of bait because it's the good stuff, and you cleaned out a whole bunch of great accounts and you became the cockroach king in whatever community you're in because of it, and that's the only thing you ever use, you've got some disappointment coming. You've got to change up now and then because the cockroaches will learn you.
Okay. All right. Two questions came in related to food so it's one's related to the best baits that they found, but the other one came in and talked about specific food preferences that cockroaches have. So what would be their filet mignon preferences in terms of cockroaches that you found? What foods they really, really love?
In most commercial kitchens, the cockroaches have more than enough carbohydrate or fats and oils, lipids and greases. They got all that they need. Mm-hmm. Carbohydrates, they always like that, so that gets a little better, but it's protein that they really, really need. And in most cases, it's a lack of protein in a restaurant full of food, and they are just scratching for any little bit of protein they can find, because that's how you make egg cases full of babies.
And so is there any benefit of putting some peanut butter and a soda cap inside of a glue board on top of the glue board to encourage them to be attracted towards it, or it doesn't matter?
You can certainly try that. The thing about cockroaches is them finding food mostly is they're not called across the room. They stumble across it, or they get close enough to it. Peanut butter, as Stephen, as you well know, is nature's most perfect food. What goes for peanut butter, and cockroaches are no exception. So yeah, go ahead and you can feel free to try stuff and use what works. If you're talking about lures, you don't have to worry about beta version to it. They make attractants, but you'll get as many different reviews as you talk to people about them. Works, doesn't work. So try stuff, see what happens. You know what the researchers use back when I was a student, so many years ago. We used to use beer and bread. And you take the heels of the bread, because now that everybody's wealthy, you can throw the heels away, the ends of the bread. So you take those and you pour the backwash out of the beer. I live in Michigan, where we have a bottle bill, and we have to pay for every bottle we take out, and we get it back. We take it back. So you pour out the empties all onto there, and so you got this beer and this bread. The cockroaches will come for that, at least in many instances. And then you put it in a jar with Vaseline around the edge and a couple of straws leading up to it, and they come in. There's a lot of things like that get their attention. The big thing is is it smelly? Sure. Is there a lot of odor to it? Because if there's an odor they love, they'll come for it. But you just got to try stuff and see what works.
Okay. Well, I think we answered this question about how many baits to have on hand. We said at least two. At least two.
At least two. I recommend 3 or more.
3 or more. Okay.
Yeah.
And then one commenter put in service vacuums. I'm assuming it's a HEPA filter vacuum to sort of simply suck them up, as opposed to using a pesticide.
No doubt about it. And if you go into a place that is so full of cockroaches, you don't know what to do next. Yeah, start with a vacuum and use the vacuum. You have one or two people with vacuums, just vacuum up absolutely everything they see. That will absolutely that's a force multiplier on what your bait's going to do for you. You're going to put in a lot of bait. It'll go a lot farther if you suck up a couple thousand cockroaches with a vacuum. So it's a good point.
All right. I don't see any additional questions coming in, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Beth.
Thank you very much, Shep. We so appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. One last thing, if you wouldn't mind putting your contact information, I think that might be on your last slide.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to reach out to Shep, again, this will be recorded. It is recorded, excuse me, and it'll be on our website, on our Moodle site. If you know somebody that missed it, it will be a course that they'll have to pay for, but it will be available for renewal credits.